On behalf of the Naval Historical Foundation and the Marine Corps Aviation Association, it's our pleasure to welcome everybody here to a very special occasion to commemorate the service and sacrifice of a World War II Marine Corps aviator and to honor the families who were directly affected by his death nearly 70 years ago. I'm Captain Todd Creekman. I've met you all. I'm a retired Navy officer, but not an aviator. And I'm the Executive Director of the Naval Historical Foundation, a nonprofit that was created 86 years ago in Washington, D.C. to preserve and commemorate naval history and to educate Americans about the importance of sea power throughout our history and for our future. We've got some very special guests here today. Mrs. Maggie Odell of Ewing, Virginia, and her son, Major John P. Odell, U.S. Air Force, currently studying at the Army's Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Mr. William F. Walters of Wellborn, Florida. Rear Admiral Richard Gentz, U.S. Navy, retired naval aviator and a director of the Naval Historical Foundation. Lieutenant Colonel Art Cifuentes, U.S. Marine Corps retired, Executive Director of the Marine Corps Aviation Association, which has co-sponsored this event and partnered with the Naval Historical Foundation to fund the travel and accommodation of our special guests. We want to thank the Marine Corps Aviation Association and Mike Burns and Roxanne Kaufman, also here today, for hosting an informal dinner for our group last evening at the Globe and Laurel restaurant just down the road from Quantico. Very enjoyable evening. We all fought our way down through the traffic to get here. It worked out great. There are also several folks I need to thank that can't be here today that helped make this event possible. Admiral James L. Holloway III, U.S. Navy retired, a World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam War combat veteran, the 20th Chief of Naval Operations, and the Chairman Emeritus of the Naval Historical Foundation and the Association of Naval Aviation, and his good friend, Vice Admiral Walter P. Massenburg, U.S. Navy retired, the current president of the Association of Naval Aviation. Both of these distinguished naval aviators contributed their own funds on behalf of their organizations to help with this event. And in this centennial year for Marine Corps Aviation, it is entirely fitting that we're able to hold this ceremony at the National Museum of the Marine Corps. And I particularly want to thank Museum Director Ms. Lynn Izell for permitting us to use this leatherneck gallery setting today, and Mr. Patrick Mooney from the museum staff for helping coordinate the setup for the event. I'm going to give you a little bit of background for today's ceremony. On the 4th of May 1945, a Navy military production aircraft, piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Julian F. Walters, U.S. Marine Corps, crashed into a mountain obscured by clouds and fog in the Cumberland Gap area of Southwest Virginia, while he was on it to Cincinnati, Ohio. Killed along with Pilot Walters was another Marine Corps aviator, Lieutenant Colonel Eugene F. Sims, and two Navy enlisted air crewmen. Local Virginia residents assisted the military in recovering the remains of the four men. The Navy, this was the end of World War II, a lot going on. The Navy abandoned the wreckage on the mountain after determining that the crash was an accident. There was nothing more to be learned. Sometime after the crash, one of the local area residents who had helped in the initial search, Mr. Earl Crumley, found a set of naval aviator wings near the crash site. He retained those wings and passed them to his daughter, Maggie Odell, born after the crash after World War II. In 2000, while witnessing her U.S. Air Force son receiving his Silver Navigator wings, Mrs. Odell recognized how significant these service aviation insignia are to aviators and their families. After several attempts to locate information on the crash and the pilot, and assuming that the pilot of a Navy plane would be a naval officer, she contacted us at the Foundation and began the dialogue. This was earlier this year, about 8 months ago. Fortunately, this is the kind of thing that we at the Naval Historical Foundation are used to dealing with. Although it seemed like a long shot at the time, we began our inquiries. With Maggie's help, we got a copy of the local Middleborough, Kentucky newspaper that reported the details of the crash. Understanding that this is so far southwest of Virginia, it's actually almost as easy to get to Kentucky and Tennessee as it is to other places in Virginia. And with that information, we were able to get a copy of the aircraft accident report from the Aviation History Branch of the Naval History and Heritage Command. The Navy never throws away paper, and this report existed. It's just been sitting there waiting for us to put our hands on it. And that's when we suddenly realized that the pilots of this naval aircraft, the pilot, was a Marine Corps aviator. So, to pull the string further, we turned to our friends down at the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, Florida. Marine Corps aviators are naval aviators. They all train together. Their records are maintained in the same place. And so the folks, the Navy historians in Pensacola were able to pull the records on both Lieutenant Colonel Walters and Lieutenant Colonel Sims and verify when they trained and the beginnings of their career. And fortunately, we're in the home of Marine Corps history here, and the Marine Corps History Division right here in Quantico was able to pull the World War II casualty cards on the two individuals, confirm not only the details of their deaths, but also give us a little bit of information on families. And that's when we learned that Lieutenant Colonel Walters had left a wife and family, while Lieutenant Colonel Sims had been unmarried at the time of his death, and so he left no direct descendants. We were talking earlier, 10, 15 years ago, that would have probably been about all we could have done at that point, until the internet came along and suddenly made searching a much more interesting adventure. Because as we were beginning to pull the strings on this, one of the researchers, one of the archivists at the Marine Corps History Division said, you know, we found a blog posting from a year ago from a gentleman, Mr. William Walters, who was asking a question about his father, Julian Walters, having to do with the crash of the Hindenburg. And you know, we're very fortunate that in this case we weren't dealing with aviators whose names were John Smith or Tom Jones or something like that. When you've got a name like Julian Fairfax Walters, you know you've got something that you can trace. And fortunately, there was a way to respond to the blog posting that Mr. Bill Walters had put up. And because of a number of things, including we've all dealt with this internet problems, it was a month later when I suddenly received a phone call out of the blue from Mr. Walters and said, well, I got your email, and I hadn't said anything in my email about what this was about other than his father's service. And it was at that point I was able to explain to him that in all likelihood we the Odells, had the wings that had belonged to his father, or possibly to his father's friend, Lieutenant Colonel Sims. So once we got that established, we all talked on the phone or by email and decided, rather than just putting it in the mail and sending it from one family to the next, why don't we see if we could gather together and make this a little more formal. As much to honor the memory of the Marines as to honor the families that had persevered in the memories. The fact that Bill had continued to look for information on his father, and the fact that the Odells realized that what they had was something special. So the ceremony the wreath ceremony we're going to do today honors both of those deceased Marine Corps aviators. We may never know exactly to whom those wings belong, but Bill Walters today represents the symbolic next of kin. Now I'd like you to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Cifuentes of the Marine Corps Aviation Association to reflect a little bit on the centennial year of naval aviation.
But the whole year we've been surprised in recognizing all those that have gone before us and celebrating their legacy and what they have left for us as we climb on their shoulders to further where we are. A. Cunningham, Ted Williams, Pappy Boyington, General Bolden, Senator Glenn, even our living legends, and even some of the characters that we still have running around today, like the Assassin and Tamer and Guts and Bones, and some of these other folks, as we carry on this tradition of who we are and where we've been. You know, our background in marine aviation, as I said, colorful, innovative, and I could talk for hours on that. But we're not here to do that. We're here today to celebrate the return of a fallen but not forgotten Warriors Navy of Wings of Gold back to the Walters family. And I would like to take that moment to thank the Walters family, the Dell family, and all others here who have served. It's a family sacrifice. It's a family affair. So everyone sacrifices, and certainly do thank you and appreciate the sacrifice that you've given. It's hard to believe, or maybe not so hard to believe, that aviation was a mature 33 years old at the time of this mishap. Colonel Walters was 23 years. Aviation was 23 years old when he got his wings and started flying. And I know that he and Colonel Sims and the other gentlemen in the aircraft are looking down right now, shaking their head in wonderment how far marine aviation has come in those years. So, but we have not we've not come so far that we've lost the legacy and the heritage of what they have handed down to us from the last 100 years. So on behalf of General Stalder and all of NCAA, again, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to be part of this ceremony, returning the Wings of Gold back to the proud chest of the Walters family. And before I step off the podium, as I said, I have a surprise for you. And I won't hand these out now, but I'm going to show them to you. This is the Centennial Book of Aviation, and this little lady right here is responsible for it. This is not your father's desktop book. This thing is unbelievable, and you'll see what I mean when you take these home. But Mr. Walters, JP, Maggie, Admiral Gantz, Todd, please take these with us with our appreciation and thanks. And Bones designed this wonderful centennial coin, so I want you to take that and kind of as a remembrance of this wonderful ceremony.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Art.
And God bless you, and Semper Fidelis.
I'd now like to introduce Rear Admiral Richard C. Gantz to speak briefly on the significance of naval aviation Wings of Gold. Admiral Gantz is a 1957 graduate of the Naval Academy with a master's degree in aeronautical engineering. Operationally, he's got over 4,600 flight hours and 520 aircraft carrier landings, flying anti-submarine warfare and airborne early warning and control Navy aircraft through a distinguished career. Ashore, he held positions of high responsibility, including serving as Commander Naval Air Systems Command. Most recently, he just completed serving as a program coordinator for the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum's Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center. Admiral Gantz?
Holy cow. Can I say that? I mean, just listening to the conversation that you had as a result of what must have been a marvelous dinner last night, I seem to be the outsider of this group. But I am very pleased. I mean, it's really, for me, it's an honor to try to come up here and put the Wings of Gold in perspective. My wife picked a tie out this morning and said, was that going to be the tie you wanted to wear? But she also put my Navy Wings tie right next to it where I could see it. So I checked with her. And the other thing is that I am wearing my Wings of Gold. I'm wearing it under the United States flag where I wear it now. I was asked at one point at the Kennedy Center in the men's room by somebody who walked by me and said, boy, those are little wings. I says, they're big enough. Okay, so yeah, I got to get prepared remarks also. This may or may not, there are too many people to acknowledge, and I still haven't gotten everybody straight. So let me make a couple of comments. Number one, Linda Zell and I worked together Hazy in the early days, Air and Space and the Hazy Center, so we know each other, and I can tell you we had some marvelous times, and some of those times I picked up in Phase 2, not with her, but the same kind of issues, and they're doing well, and Jack Daly, who was my boss as a Marine aviator, and has been an incredible guy to work with. My wings. It was early September 1958 when 5 of us flew out to the USS Antietam, anchored in Corpus Christi Bay, and Carquoit, 5 carrier landings in my log. It was anchored because there was a hurricane coming. We didn't know the difference. We just did what we had to do to land on the carrier, and came back and they gave us our wings, and off we went. My last flight operationally, as I was driving down here this morning, I realized was probably 2 or 3 July 1976. Back that up 200 years. In between all of the stuff that you kind of touched on. Military aviation is an unforgiving process. I never flew in combat, but I lost a lot of friends. I saw some of them go. Ran a flight deck on an aircraft carrier. 70 airplanes turning and burning. You see things, like it's not like Da Nang, but if you're a military aircraft, you see St. Elmo's fire rolling up and down the inside of the airplane. Did that one night in the Med. One of the guys in the back seat, who was relatively old, had a family, came back and turned in his wings. He couldn't quite understand why this green stuff was flying around as we were making a sharp turn to final to get down the glide slope to land on the Kennedy in Nevada. There are stories there that go back. We tried to go through your dad's history. It's a little sketchy, but I'll bet if you keep doing what you're doing and keep asking the right questions, you're going to find out. Wings of Gold. It's an interesting story, and I'll leave you with the section out of the history of naval aviation. And I too will kind of read a little bit here. It is not a straightforward process, as you can imagine. 1911 naval aviation, 1912 Marine Corps aviation. The Air Force had started in 1908 following the successful making of a contract by the Wright brothers, and they were pretty much ahead. They put their wings on in 1913. The Navy started looking around for something like that. The Brits, other foreign people were doing it, services because of to separate aviators. The first thing that the Navy had to do if they were going to do this is they had to figure out who deserved it. And that brought up the idea of who were the first aviators. And there were two columns in there. One was a pilot assigned for pilot duty, and two was when they qualified, mostly in the early days flying Curtiss airplanes, later Wright airplanes. And so that set up a list of priority, and they made the wings up after several years. Final design 1917, and the fellow who was involved with this was at that time a Lieutenant Commander John H. Towers. Well, yeah, okay. Anybody who knows naval aviation knows Towers. And you get into this stuff, the hair goes up on the back of your neck. I'm waxing more eloquent than I should. But I wrote a story on Towers and NC-3 back in about '02 for A&A. He landed in NC-3 on the trip from Maine, actually it was from Newfoundland, across to the Azores, and then they landed and were going to continue on to cross the Atlantic. Well, we broke the airplane when he landed. It was a little rougher than he thought. He navigated NC-3 backwards. Doesn't say anything in any of the publications that makes it clear, but all of us who fly know that airplanes weathercock. So if the wind's coming on the side, the airplane is going to want to turn into the wind. So these guys had to navigate this airplane backwards for some 96 hours. They actually got into Punta Agueda in the Azores before NC-4. The airplane is credited for going across. So that right away, he brought me back to that. The requirement that was given for the wings was they not be sold to individuals. Each set had a number of the aviators' precedents obtaining qualification. This also caused confusion, I don't know what I touched on. It is possible that Captain Towers was an early recipient. He's a Naval Aviator number 3, pilot number 2. Cunningham was 5. He was then the senior aviator serving in the capacity since Ellison had transferred to submarines in the mid-1900s. He came back later in about 28 or 29, crashed and killed himself in an airplane. Well, the design of the wings has changed subtly over the years. And we were looking at these wings and the pictures that come out of the book to try to see where 1930 wings would have fit. We haven't been able to discern the wings. It could be that they're not the original wings. It's possible. But nevertheless, we know where they came from. We know the history behind them. I hope I've clarified that for you a little bit. The wings that I wore and I'm wearing now have basically been the same since the 50s. I did a little research. Submarines got their Dolphins in 1923. Admiral King, later Fleet Admiral King, was involved with that. Combat Infantryman badge was 1943. It dated from December 6, 1941. They backdated it. And that was and the surface warfare was 1975, correct? Roughly. There were a lot of interesting changes in Navy insignia during that period of time. Appreciate having the opportunity to do this. The foundation does a marvelous job, and I'm proud to have an opportunity to do this. Thank you very much, all of you.
Maggie and JP, would you come forward and offer a few remarks from the Odell family side?
Thanks everyone for having us here. Foundation, especially Mr. Creekman for working with my mother. These words are on behalf of our family. Those wings have been out of your family since 1945. I know they meant a lot to our family based on where they were stored. Anything that went in my grandfather's gun cabinet was very important to him. So whatever happened on that day, it made a significant impact. From then they were transferred to my grandmother's jewelry cabinet, which is also a very special place in our family. And since she passed, I've rested with my mother's jewelry. Going through flight training, I know what wings mean to an individual. And having had naval aviators in my class, when my mother saw us all get our wings, it made an impact on her as well. And that's when she decided that we needed to go home. So after doing some research, I'm glad we're able to find you. I know, having 2 kids now, that I will give them my wings someday, and you are the rightful recipient of those. So I know they've been a part of our family for 67 years, and they mean a lot, so it's kind of hard for my mother to give up, but it's the right thing to do, and definitely right to go back to you, Mr. Walters. So thanks for doing all the legwork and helping us get them where they need to be.
Okay, and Mr. Walters, if you would join us.
Let you do this. My mother did 95% of the work. She's definitely the person to give them back.
And now we have something that the Walters family would like to give to the Odell. Hold it up, Mike. Okay. your turn.
Good morning. Coming up here, I'm sorry. I spent many hours driving, trying to think what I would say. Can't think of anything, so thank you. My dad, he loved the Marine Corps. And my mom loved it too. Excuse me. I could not get in the Corps because I was sole surviving son. He would not be joined. So I joined just a dangerous job. You were talking about military not forgiving. I joined the fire department, spent 20 years there. And I knew every time we went out the door there was danger involved. We never knew what was coming. I think that's what happened here. The Navy Museum and Marine Corps Aviation Association have done amazing things, and kind of brought my quest to a bit. I think last night you used the word closure. Somebody used it. And quite honestly, I don't like that word. I think it wrote another chapter in my family's history. And maybe put a better chapter in it. And I think, Major, you'll find out as you go through your career, there'll be a lot of chapters. When I was growing up, thanks to other Marine Corps and Naval aviators, who, pardon the pun, took me under their wing and took care of me, helped take care of me, I learned about my dad. I was always told about the Hindenburg. That's what started this quest, finding out if that was true. And I did, it was true. But I will tell you, when Captain Friedman contacted me, after he talked to me, I sat there and cried like a baby. Abel, you honor me for your presence. I just can't think of anything else to say except thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings our ceremony to a close today. Thanks for being here. I would like to invite everyone to take some time to tour this museum, this marvelous tribute to the Marines over the centuries. The Marines will celebrate their 237th birthday here in a few short weeks. Aviation's got 100 of those. And all that story is told right here. For those that would like to join us, there's a great restaurant up on the second floor called the Tun Tavern Restaurant. And somewhere around 11:30, some of us will gather up there, grab a sandwich, and if you'd like to join us, then fine. But otherwise, thank you all for making it on this beautiful day, and God bless the Navy and the Marine Corps, and I hope we get another 237 years out of both of them. Thank you very much.